Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you're doing the live video, and let's get straight into it. So starting off, of course, with the boxing news, and Bennett versus Webb, McCann versus Maycock, Gaskin, Henty versus Gergich, and Mary will fight October 19th. Milnicki Jr., Rodriguez versus Castaneda, Palanco, Johnson, Diaz and Feliz will fight September 27th. Matchroom will return to Monte Carlo December 14th. It's not been announced or really kind of rumoured too much who might headline that yet, but you know, it's a return and they always seem to put on high class shows there at a high, how do I put it, fancier, I suppose, level, not quite the boxing crowds in which you're often used to in the UK. Lara will fight Delgado August 30th, a fighter in which Lara is really going to have to show a lot and really impress me, especially, well, me, because I don't believe that he is ever going to be able to get back to a world championship level, just from what I've seen from recent performances of him. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see how he performs in this fight, and it's a big opportunity for him. Fury will fight Fun September 27th. The EBU have ordered Silva versus Dolan. I think that is an excellent fight. Dolan is somebody who I've been following her career for a long time now, as you know, I've interviewed her over a year ago, I believe now, and she's progressed amazingly, and now getting European opportunities is a great story, to be completely honest. Beterbiev versus Bivol, Stevenson versus Cordina, Eubank Jr. versus Seremeta, Clark versus Wardley, 2, Optai versus Massey, Whitaker versus Cameron, Nicholson versus Chapman, and Alakel versus Gonzalez will fight October 12th, and another absolutely stacked Riyadh season card, and it's an interesting one with some intriguing fights. I mean, of course, Beterbiev versus Bivol is going to be an amazing contest, one in which, I mean, I just hope will actually go ahead this time. Of course, it got rearranged the first time, and I knew that His Excellency was keen to get it back on, and of course, it's great to see that that is the case. And then when you look at the undercard, I mean, Stevenson versus Cordina was a fight which was spoke about for about a week, and it kind of came out of nowhere when it was actually announced. Stevenson obviously isn't now signed with Matchroom, so it was quite an easy fight to make, I'd imagine, with Cordina also being with Matchroom. But Cordina moving up in weight, it's going to be intriguing. He's got a new team around him, which I'll speak about in a moment, but it's going to be a very tough test. But Stevenson, I think this could be one of his toughest tests yet. It would be interesting, obviously, Cordina coming off the loss, where his head's at, and how focused Stevenson is for this contest, with, of course, the other big names being around him. I don't really know how much he knew about Cordina as a fighter before this announcement, but yeah, like I say, that's an interesting matchup. Eubank Jr., it's great to see him back fighting again. Obviously, it's not really against somebody who's in that well known. It's seen as a bit of a tick over fight and a bit of a, you know, get him into Riyadh season and get him fighting type of fight before he goes on to fight one of these big names in which he's calling out. So he's going to have to deliver, and he's going to have to put on a show. There's a lot of pressure on him to do that, and to not, like, he can't afford to lose at all for this one. Clark versus Wardley too. I mean, it was an amazing fight the first time. I'm kind of glad to see that this is on a Riyadh season card, because they do both deserve the money from that first fight to be able to get a really big payday for this second fight. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be another very good matchup, another very good fight there. Optai vs Massey is an interesting one. I didn't expect that to be announced at all. I mean, Massey, obviously, he's coming off quite a big win himself, but it's English, well, British Commonwealth level. It's nowhere near world title level, and Optai is, of course, world champion. And I suppose, you know, I respect Optai for wanting to stay active, and there's not really loads of options available in the cruiserweight divisions if certain fighters aren't really ready to fight and things like that. I mean, I don't think the Billum Smith fight was there ready to be made. So I suppose in that aspect, maybe it does make a little bit of sense, but it definitely could be wrong matchmaking, because as of what we've seen from Optai against British opponents that aren't really proven at a world level, he does kind of just walk straight through them, as he did versus Thompson and as he did versus Zorro. And so this might be the case here. We'll have to, of course, wait and see. But it's a huge opportunity for Massey. Speak about huge opportunities. This Cameron fight versus Whitaker, it's great to see now Boxer being involved with Riyadh season, because it opens the door to a lot more good fights. I mean, what Eubank Jr., Clark, Massey, and Whitaker all being boxer fighters, it, like I say, it does open a lot more doors, and I think this is going to be a tough test for Whitaker. Cameron obviously isn't the most technical of fighters, but did come off a really good, well fought fight versus Lyndon Arthur, in which it could have been given as a draw if depending on which way you look at it. And Cameron, of course, is always going to give his all and really going to push. And I think he's going to put Whitaker to the test. I don't think he's going to care for his movements and confident things in which Whitaker does. I think he's just going to try and stick to the old-fashioned ways in which he fights, and yeah, that's going to be an entertaining test and an intriguing fight. And then Nicholson vs Chapman, I think, is an excellent fight as well. It's one which has been talked about from both fighters for a long time. I think it makes sense as a fight, and is probably the one that makes sense the most in that division for the two of them. And it's nice to finally see this going ahead yet again, promoters working together, and Nicholson is really developing nicely at a world level, and this is a step up for Chapman. But I think it's, like I say, going to be a good test for both, as some of these world level type fighters, women fighters, aren't always amazingly good. But I think Chapman's technical ability is impressive, and so, like I say, this is going to be a tough test for Nicholson. And then moving on, Avila versus Henderson, Virgo versus Batista, Knight versus Cray Cray, Poker versus Pittman, Hru versus Jade, Tobe versus Kells, Raxi versus Ham, and Stokey versus Bowden will fight September 14th. That is filling up that Elbrook card pretty nicely, to be honest. Obviously, it's Misfits boxing, so it depends if you're into that or not, but I don't mind it. McGiven, Brown, Cooper, and Biswana will fight October 5th. Matchroom are getting a Netflix documentary. It's basically around the Hearns and how everything's happened with them and how they've developed as a brand and everything like that to become what is Matchroom Boxing currently, and I'm here for it, and I think it's going to be a good documentary which I'll definitely be watching. And moving on, His Excellency wants Bicoli versus Zhang in China or Africa. I think it's a fight that, Zhang might be a little bit reluctant to take, because Bicoli obviously is coming off the win versus Anderson, but hasn't really fought at a top level, and so obviously I think the money of His Excellency will probably sway him to want that fight, and if it's in China especially, that could be a huge fight. And so, I mean, China boxing hasn't really ever been put on too much of a platform, and so if they make a stacked Riyadh season card with that as a main event, then why not? That would be amazing to see. Pantene has joined Golden Boy. Golovkin has not been offered a fight versus Crawford. A little bit of a rumour, but that was cleared up that wasn't the case. Will we ever see Golovkin fight again? Hopefully. Do I think the Crawford fight makes sense? Not really, but like I say, hopefully we'll see him fight again. I think there is still a little bit more for him to give, but if not, then he's had an amazing career, so it's obviously he doesn't have to fight anymore. Moving on, Conlon has teamed up with Smith. Wardley has joined Queensbury. Galician drew versus Mastrapa. Daicho won via TK round 2 versus Lewis. Valle won via unanimous decision versus Piz Dryhita. Hurd drew versus Rosario. Angeletti won via unanimous decision versus Valdez. I think in general that Hurd versus Rosario fight, I would like to see a rematch. I think when you are a fighter who has fought at a world level and has come off from that level and isn't really able to get back to that point in their career because of age and things like that, and ability and things like that, I think it's nice to see matchups like Hurd versus Rosario, because they are just two fighters who were at a world level and just aren't really able to get there anymore. And instead of putting them against up and comers who have a lot of momentum and are probably going to walk through them, it's nice to see them go up against each other when they are at a similar point in their career. And so in general, it makes for great fights, like I believe that fight was. And like I said, I'd like to see the rematch of that fight, and hopefully more fights like that will happen. Like I say, instead of just having gatekeeper type fighters being the case. Moving on, and Inoue versus Satsumi, Taraji versus Rosales, Akui versus Charun Fak, and Iwatawa versus Noriega will fight October 13th. Nakatani versus Chipatana Nasuaki versus Asilo, Tanaka versus Kafu, and Olaskuga versus Gonzalez will fight October 14th. That is a great thing what Top Rank have done, put in two sets of stacked Japanese, well, a lot of them world title fights on back-to-back nights in Japan. That's going to be amazing, and I'm here for all of that. I'm going to be doing, of course, my prediction, my breakdowns, and obviously they're on paper. Some of the opponents aren't really seen at the level in which the champions are, but I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on the champions, and I believe we will see at least a couple upsets in there. And yeah, in general, I believe that is a great bit of, I suppose, matchmaking or showman type. I don't even know what I'm saying. The type of showmanship to be able to put two shows on back-to-back nights with the cards being that stacked shows how much talent there is in Japan to be able to do that. Moving on, Bahachuk will feature on the possibly could feature on the Fury vs Usyk 2 undercard. Fury will rematch Usyk December 21st. That was pretty much announced a while ago now, but I mean Usyk put out a fight poster, so I thought I might as well mention it as well. Stevenson has joined Matchroom. Corleone has been banned for 4 years. Promnik won via KO in round 2 versus Marley. Alberts won via KO in round 1 versus Renato. Koopman won via unanimous decision versus Moyo. Natuli won via unanimous decision versus Van Herden. Thompson won via unanimous decision versus Jure. Malajika won via KO in round 11 versus Sig Kibo to remain IBO World Super Flyweight Champion. Rivera won via technical unanimous decision versus Calvo to become WBA World Light Flyweight Interim Champion. Smith versus Fernandez was cancelled. Cordina has teamed up with Smith. Bermudez will fight Mike September 21st. Nunes will fight Mariaga August 31st. Brown won by a KO in round 1 versus Guadarrama. Silva won by a KO in round 3 versus Artiga. Moten won by a KO in round 1 versus Vasquez. Varka won by a majority decision versus Rodriguez. Nino won by unanimous decision versus Torres. Picasso won by unanimous decision versus Hovhannissian to become WBC Silver Super Bantamweight Champion. Ortiz drew versus Correa, and Mayweather drew versus Gotti Free. And to speak about that card, which in general, boxing wise, the eyes on it, probably was the biggest card of the week, which was maybe a little bit of a shame, but nonetheless, there was some interesting highlights. I mean, Moten just walking through Vasquez like it was nothing, an amazing stoppage for him, and again, a confidence booster, a momentum booster. Obviously, how young he is to be able to just keep walking through what he's doing is really impressive, even if not quite yet the level of opponents are anything too crazy. It's nice to see him keeping active on these big cards, and he really is creating a big name for himself, and I'm sure if he can get to a world title level, he's got that name there to be able to have big fights. And it's interesting for him because he does seem to be getting quite a bit of maybe slander in a way because of the opponents he's facing so far. And obviously, you can't really compare him to, I believe, the likes of like an Andy Cruz, who is progressing so quickly and fighting through the rankings so quickly. Because Moten, he's a lot younger. He hasn't quite got that amateur experience at that same level, and he's just going to go down a different career path, I believe. I think he does have the ability, as he is showing, to be able to fight at a high level. But I just think it is going to take a bit more time, and it isn't just going to be something that's just gonna, he's not going to get thrown into title fights like it's nothing really quickly. I think, like I say, it's going to take time. He's going to keep progressing, keep making a name, keep getting these really impressive stoppages for him, and then, like I say, creating a brand for himself. The Picasso versus Hovhannissian fight was a great fight. Hovhannissian normally in great fights, and I just don't necessarily know how much is left for his career now. Ortiz's career was a kind of boring exhibition, to be honest. It wasn't really anything too interesting, and I'm kind of glad that Ortiz didn't end up fighting Mayweather. Okay, it wasn't really going to be anything, I think. But then Mayweather versus Gotti Free was an interesting exhibition. It kind of played out similar to how the first one played out, with Mayweather just being so dominant and Gotti Free not really throwing too much, and Mayweather just being a bit too slick, too clean, making Gotti question himself all the time, not really throwing too much power. I said I got my prediction right. I didn't think it would be a knockout winner or anything like that, even if Gotti was more aggressive, which he wasn't really. The main interesting thing was the fact that Mayweather sacked the ref halfway through, which is something I've never seen. Just to bin off a ref halfway through who was making that questionable couple decisions, but yeah, nonetheless, it was weird. I think the whole fight was a bit weird as well. Mayweather still talking to the crowd and everything like that. I'm sure he was loving it, trying to make it as entertaining as possible. But in general, I don't necessarily know how much of the fans were enjoying it. But another Mayweather exhibition done now, and I'll probably end up seeing him fight again soon, no doubt. Perez won via unanimous decision versus Paz. Narvaez won via unanimous decision versus Varela. Batovena won by unanimous decision versus Palazino. Thompson won by decision versus won by unanimous decision versus Velafan. Carty won by unanimous decision versus Perez. Aguero won via TK in round 5 versus Monreal to remain WBA Federatin Super Featherweight Champion. And Munoz won via TKO in round 10 versus Thompson to remain WBA Gold Lightweight Champion. Romero won via TKO in round 10 versus Valenzuela to remain WBA World Super Bantamweight Champion. And I got my prediction wrong for this main event. I haven't had a chance to see it. I can't find footage of the fight anywhere, but nonetheless, it's Romero back to winning ways with a stoppage, which is very nice for her, and hopefully can go back to bigger fights. I would still love to see the Erica Cruz rematch for her. Or I thought Valenzuela could have done enough to do it. I didn't really think Romero was showing too impressive of things from the past 2 draws that she'd had before, but she stayed undefeated and proved me wrong. And like I say, impressive for her. And now moving on to the MMA news. Dern will rematch Rebus December 14th. Royval will fight Tara October 12th. I might have already said this in a weekly fight roundup before, but it is a great fight. I'm definitely going to be doing a prediction for it. I can't wait for it. I'm surprised it's only on a fight night. It should be on a pay-per-view in my opinion. But yeah, it's going to be an excellent fight. I believe that one. Kong won via KO in round 1 versus Leonardo. Cavalcanti won via decision versus Nunes. Borschev won via unanimous decision versus Lontop. Reese won via decision versus Medina. Marshall won via decision versus Buzka. Mirskart won via submission in round 2 versus Shabazin. Marias won via KO in round 1 versus Magni. Santos won via KO in round 2 versus Offley. Loda won via KO in round 2 versus Valentin. Ritchie won via decision versus Hill. Boraya won via decision versus Cannonier. And to speak a bit more about that card, a couple of things I just wanted to speak about. Of course, Meerschaert becoming the most stoppages, getting the most stoppages in the UFC middleweight division, which is an interesting stat. Obviously, that possibly was inevitably going to come because of him keeping on getting fights and fighting quite regularly and not against the highest level of guys, and him being able to get submissions against a certain level of opposition. But he's beaten Anderson Silva's record, but Anderson Silva's record was of course against a lot tougher top of guys. But nonetheless, you can't take that away. He's got that record there, so credit to him. Marias, a very good stoppage in round 1 versus Magny. Magny's career kind of unfortunately seemingly done now, but Marias looks like a very top kind of name coming through now and undefeated as well. It seems like he's quite a scary guy to be facing against. Santos, that was a brutal knockout versus Offley. The Ultimate Fighter finals always seem to deliver, and that was a big stoppage. Loda, that was a nice win, a nice KO kind of win. It was very good grappling, I think, in general, and Loda was known for being able to grapple very well, and in general getting that. It was a weird KO, of course, he just couldn't really move Valentin, so he was just continuously getting elbowed, but nonetheless, like I said, that was a good win for him, and of course, Ultimate Fighter winners coming through now, they're going to have that back in that potential to be able to reach a high level, and Baraya, Cannonier, that was a good fight. It was a very good fight, I believe. Actually, I think Cannonier showed some toughness. He looked very good in that second round and was switching stances nicely. And if he followed up on a bit more of his work, I think he was maybe a little bit scared to gas himself out, possibly with the age he's at and everything like that. I think if this was a Cannonier a few years ago, this could have been a completely different story. But Barrio ended up, I don't think he's able to fight on the inside too well, and I think he does get hit quite a lot, and I don't think his movement's amazing and his footwork in general. But when he's on the front foot attacking wise, his striking is very impressive, and he has that power, and he hurt Cannonier, and Cannonier did very well to be able to not get stopped in that final round. It looked like he was out, so it was very surprising that he didn't. It shows his toughness, but in general, Barrio has now got himself into a fifth position into the middleweight rankings, and I think he could definitely get future big fights around. It would be interesting to see who he gets matched with next. The Vittori fight wouldn't be a one I'd be against. Imavov, maybe. I don't think he's quite ready for a Whittaker yet, but maybe one more fight, and I think he could possibly be there. But he's a new name around the middleweight division. An Adesanya fight would be an entertaining one, but I just don't think for Adesanya that makes sense. So yeah, I think he's still going to have one more fight around that fourth, fifth, sixth, maybe seventh level contenders in the middleweight division. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like if you didn't, like, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.